Good afternoon, my conscious co-creators. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. I am very, very pleased that you are all here with me today. We've got another wonderful show in store for you with an excellent returning guest, and I'll bring him on in just a moment. But first, of course, we have our blog post from a couple of years ago. And let's get to it. So, this blog post is entitled, To Experience True Magic, We Need to Surrender. Magic is not something we can force. It is not to be called upon on demand, though we think we can sometimes, and that is what frustrates us. The challenge when working with the magic of life is surrendering to the moment, to the timing of the universe, letting go of the need to control. Too often, the desire to experience magic is born of a need to control life and its unpredictability, and to make things go the way we want them to go. Yet when we release the need to control, we can experience something greater, something beyond our own imagination. For the deepest and truest magic comes from somewhere outside of us, from a place that is eternal and infinite, directing that infiniteness into something that finite takes the magic away. It leaves no room for things to work out even better than we could imagine. There are tremendous possibilities and potentials out there that exist in the realm of the unknown. That is why the universe has a much better imagination than we do. True magic happens when we surrender to the unknown and release all the need to control. When the eternal can bring us to new heights and new vistas in our life. It can work dynamic potentials into our path that we could never have planned out on our own. We could never force such magic to happen because we could have never imagined all the intricacies that go into a magical event. Magic is not only beyond our imagination, it is beyond our planning, beyond our ability to arrange all the events that need to happen to create such wonders. So to experience real magic, the key ingredient is surrender. Surrender all need to control, to receive a specific outcome, to have things go the exact way we want them to go. Only then can we experience true magic. So I wrote this blog post after a conversation with my wife where we were just kind of talking about the way things worked out around a certain situation. And they worked out like better than we could possibly imagine. And the reason why they were able to work out that way was because we weren't trying so hard to control like every aspect of what we were doing. We just kind of let things happen naturally. And because we did, things worked out even better than we thought. And when we sat down afterwards and we were just reflecting on the situation, and we were looking at all these things. We realized, oh my God, like if this didn't happen and that didn't happen and that didn't happen and this got us here and that got us there, like it was so many factors had come into play that got things to go exactly the way they did go, that hadn't had if we had tried to like really control things and make things go, like we could not have ever thought of all these little different facets that had to come into play, that had to work out exactly right for things to really go in a truly wonderful, wonderful way. Now, look, sometimes it does take perspective. Sometimes it takes time to see how things worked out. Sometimes in the moment, it appears that things are not working out in our favor and we're upset and we're depressed because it seems like everything is going the wrong way. But then weeks and months and years later, we can reflect on that. And then we see, well, actually, no. Actually, even though that was a very challenging situation, things worked out even better than we thought they could have. So sometimes just surrendering to the unknown of life. And look, I'm not saying this is 100% of the time, all the time for every single case, but sometimes just letting go of the need to control, just letting go of pushing things to work out the way we want them to work out exactly. Sometimes that surrender allows things to work out in a fashion we never could have imagined, to work out in a way that we would never have been able to plan and execute in a way for everything to work out so well. So, it's just interesting. I work with a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people, and it's just so interesting how many people I meet who want to experience something magical, yet at the same time, they feel the need to control everything. And this reflection of how this need to control and wanting to see magic in life, they're really at odds with each other. And it was just my personal reflection that the most magical times in my life were the times when I surrendered the most. So that's the story of this blog, and that's why I share this with you all today, because I know there are many people out there who really want to experience some magic in your lives, who want to experience some miracle of some kind. And so my experience has taught me that one of the key lessons in that experience is surrender. So that's my blog post for this week. The title again is To Experience True Magic, We Need to Surrender. And of course, you can always find my blog on my personally branded website, theconsciousconsultant.com, or on the station's website at talkradio.nyc/blog. All right. Now, it is my extreme pleasure to welcome back to the show Dr. Richard Lewis Miller, a clinical psychologist for more than 65 years, multi-time best-selling author, and host of his own internet radio broadcast, the Mind, Body, Health, and Politics Show. Dr. Miller is the founder of the internationally acclaimed Cokenders alcohol and drug program and the creator and chief clinician of the health sanctuary at Wilbur Hot Springs in California. He has served on the faculty of the University of Michigan, as well as Stanford University, and an advisor on the President's Commission on Mental Health, as a founding board member of the Gestalt Institute of San Francisco, and on the National Board of Directors of the Marijuana Policy Project. His new book, Adverse Effects and Therapeutic Potential of Psychedelic Medicines, arrives at a moment when the psychedelic conversation urgently needs the full story rather than a sanitized one. What makes Dr. Miller's new work distinct is his willingness to look at both sides of the medicine, drawing together insights from world experts in psychiatry, neuroscience, and psychedelic research. The book goes where most others do not, into side effects, integration challenges, and the cases where psychedelic use has caused real harm. It also offers evidence-based guidance on how these substances can still be used safely and effectively in a therapeutic context. Coming from one of the earliest advocates for psychedelic research, this is not the voice of caution from the outside. It is a voice of someone who has spent decades inside the conversation, watching what works, what does not work, and what happens when reverence gives way to hype. Thank you, Dr. Miller, for taking the time to come on my show today.
Oh, so thank you so much for having me again. Pleasure to be with you. You have such a great radio voice. I just like listening to you.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. I appreciate that. I really am excited about having you come on because I love the fact that your book is really talking about, the sides of psychedelic medicine that you don't often hear most people talk about. People love to talk about, oh, I went down to Peru and had this great experience, or I went to work with this facilitator and did a bunch of mushrooms and it was life-changing. But when somebody doesn't have a good experience, you don't often hear them talk about it too much. And there's so much movement, there's so much happening today in the psychedelic industry that I felt it's important to present maybe a more balanced view of what, not just the potential and the good that they have, but the risk and the dangers as well.
In way of context, the pharmaceutical industry in this country are driven by profits to the expense of their customers or patients. And that is a very sad state of affairs. And it's a sad state of affairs in many areas of industry in the United States, where there's more concern about making profit than what the customer will get down the road. And the pharmaceutical industry has, been particularly reprehensible about this because they've been caught over and over again hiding their adverse effects. And what a person really wants to know when they ingest a medicine is, what are the benefits? What are the possible benefits that I can get from this medicine? And what are the adverse effects that I might get from this medicine? Right. Because if the adverse effects outweigh the benefits, or they're even close, a person might not want to take the particular medicine. Case in point, there is a medicine called letrozole that is given to women who have a particular kind of breast cancer. And the letrozole has such negative effects, including fatigue, including complete loss of sex drive, including irritability and personality distortions. This medicine has so many adverse effects that even though it's potentially life-saving, in stopping cancer from coming back, even though it's potentially life-saving, a significant percentage of women choose not to take it because the negative effects are so severe.
Right.
And I'm using that as a case in point. And by the way, while I'm talking about breast cancer, let me just make a brief public safety announcement and say that if you or anybody you know that's listening to this or watching this knows a woman who has what's called dense breast tissue, that woman needs to be alerted, because as it turns out, 50% of the women in the United States have dense breast tissue. If you have that, when you go for your mammogram to detect the possibility of cancer, the gold standard, namely the MRI, is not adequate for women with dense breast tissue. It's only adequate for women who do not have dense breast tissue. And women across the country are not being told about this. So they take the MRI, they think they're in the clear, and they're not. And therefore, the cancer that they have now has a chance to metastasize and go to the other parts of the body where it could kill them. Whereas if it was detected while it was still in the breast, it could be eliminated. And so this is an important piece of information for everybody to know. Getting back now to the book and adverse effects, I do digress at times.
Well, let me ask you.
With the pharmaceuticals.
Let me ask just one question. So when we're talking, because I want to be clear for our audience, when we're talking about adverse effects, we're not just talking about a bad trip, right? People have had bad trips for decades. A bad trip does not necessarily indicate an adverse effect. Many people say a bad experience, a quote unquote bad experience, is one that they actually learn the most from. But an adverse effect is actually something different, isn't it?
Correct. A bad trip is an opportunity to, if you have a bad trip and you have the right guide, a bad trip is the best trip you can have, because it's bringing out material that's extremely difficult to deal with. It's bringing out your demons. It's bringing out the stuff that's been stuffed into compartments for years. And all of a sudden you take this medicine and out pops this material from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? It can be terrifying. But if you have the right guide, it then becomes healing, and it becomes mastery, and it becomes self-confidence that I took a look at that terrible stuff in my box and I met it head on and I dealt with it and I healed it and I soothed it and I loved it. And now I'm not afraid anymore of the possibility of it jumping out of that box while I'm sitting and having a nice dinner or driving down the road or teaching a class or doing my work. All the places it might have come out and terrified me. I don't have that anymore. So a bad trip can be a great trip. However, a bad trip without proper guidance can be an adverse effect because it's not healed, it's not soothed, it just feeds on itself, and the person is exhausted finally from dealing with the anxiety and the terror, and they're looking forward to the end of it, and then they often have flashbacks. But that is one adverse effect having to do with the actual psychology of the medicine. But there are other adverse effects that are in different categories. For example, some psychedelic medicines lead to blood pressure spikes, very rapid. Some people go into what's called tachycardia, which means heart rate over 100. They'll approach 120, 130, 140. Tachycardia is very dangerous, and tachycardia can bring with it afibrillation, which means the heart goes out of rhythm. A heart out of rhythm is a problematical heart that could lead to heart failure.
Yeah.
So these are dangers. Heart rate is a danger. Blood pressure spike is a possible adverse effect. Dehydration is a
Yeah.
possible effect. And then there are many, many others which you can read about in the book. But the more important thing than listing all of them is to get across to the public that we're going through a renaissance, and there's a kind of wanting to jump on the bandwagon and fly to Peru or jump into your latest, ayahuasca trip or something, somebody you hear about. And jumping into psychedelics can be akin to getting up in an airplane and you never flew before, and somebody says, take over the wheel. It's
Yeah.
not a safe thing to do. There's
Right.
a lot of research that a person wants to do if they want to use these medicines properly and use them for their own benefit, their own mind expansion, their own personal health, their own communicating with a loved one. They're wonderful for a lot of things. But like any other tool, it's important to learn how to use the tool before you use it, or I should say, like many tools. There are some tools, a screwdriver, a pair of pliers, you can pick it up, you know what to do. But there are other things, like technical things and things that require practice that you don't just jump on and do. As I said, you don't fly a
Right.
plane alone. You don't get on a tractor by yourself if you've never been on one and just start driving it. And these medicines need to be treated with the same level of respect if
Mm.
and only if safety is of interest to you. If
Yeah.
safety is not of interest to you and you say, I don't care what happens to me, I'll throw the dice, whatever happens, it'll happen. If you're that kind of person, then I'm not talking. I'm talking to a whole different
Right.
crowd, a
Right.
crowd who wants to take care of their sacred body and treat it as well as possible. And then there are protocols to learn in order to safely take these medicines and get benefit and get
Right.
benefit.
Right. And there are certain people who working with psychedelic medicines is perfectly fine. But then there are other people who have a risk profile that make it somewhat unsafe to work with these medicines in general, right? Like people who have experienced psychosis in their life or bipolar or certain mania, that these medicines can trigger a relapse into those conditions. So it's important for people to research and educate themselves and understand that these sacred substances are not for everyone.
Well, actually, we just don't know about those categories that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And so, in the name of safety, since we're tiptoeing into this whole science after it's been suppressed by the government for over 50 years, we're just tiptoeing in. And when you
Mm.
tiptoe in, you want to practice and do the research on people who are as safe as possible, not the
Right.
ones who are the outliers. Now, it's theoretically possible, sir, that
Hmm.
these medicines might be excellent for bipolar. They might
Hmm.
be excellent for obsessive compulsive behavior. In fact, there's some research on that already. They
Yeah.
might be excellent for schizophrenia. However, it's too early in our research to risk giving it to those people as an experiment because there is concern, just as you pointed out, that the opposite might happen. They might go further into their aberrant behavior, or if you want to use the language, their psychosis. They
Hmm.
might go further into it. So it's just scary for the profession to pick people who are outliers or who have any kind of pre-existing condition that could lead to big problems. Nobody wants to be the therapist that's dealing with that if something really terrible, out of control should happen.
Right, right.
Right?
I mean, yes, there's always the possibility that in the long term, the healing could be tremendous. However, does the person have the support they need? Are they able do they have the environment? Are they able to deal with it? Do they have the right guidance?
Yes.
And
Yes.
most people probably don't if some major incident like
That's
that
right.
happens. So,
Yeah.
we need to be mindful of not just what happens while they're under the influence, but what happens after the fact.
Afterwards. Absolutely. Great point, Michael. And by the
So,
way, as an aside that's related, there is a nonprofit organization called the Fireside Project
yeah.
that offers free counseling to anybody who's having a difficult time while they're under the influence of psychedelic medicine. You've heard of the
Mhm.
Fireside Project. Yeah.
Yes, I know the gentleman who started it.
Joshua White?
Yes, yes, up in Connecticut. Yeah, I met him many, many years ago.
Oh, I work with him. I'm an advisor to the
Uh,
Fireside Project.
oh,
And,
wonderful,
and I
wonderful.
think it's a great organization offering this free counseling without and anonymously. If you're having, and everybody listening to this should tell everybody they know and tell them to tell everybody they know that there's free counseling if you get in trouble during a psychedelic experience and you call
Mhm.
Fireside Project, they'll have somebody to talk to you.
Yes,
But let's
yes.
get back to the politics of this. The politics of corporations such as Big Pharma
Hmm.
who hide information from the public that might deter their sales.
Right,
What I'm
right.
advocating for in my book, Adverse Effects, is I'm advocating that psychedelic science do the exact opposite and tell
Mm,
everything that we know. Let the public
mm,
know about every pimple, every little problem, so that the public can make informed decisions. Do
mm.
I want to take this? Here's what happens. This percentage, 3% of the people got this, 12% got this. Is this worth is this worth it to me given my situation?
Right, right. So they can make a more informed decision. But it's a tricky um, prospect to get them because how do you get an organization that come together for the purpose of making money, release information that might cause them to make less money? Right? They're not going to do that on their own
Well,
necessarily.
maybe that leaves it up to the rest of us who are not in the medicine manufacturing business to pull back the covers. Now, I want to tell you about some other side effects. Here's a
Sure.
side effect that happened to me, a negative adverse effect
Mm-hmm.
from psychedelic medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an honest citizen. I've been an honest citizen all my life. I believe that if I were to become a dishonest citizen, then I would have to go to college for 11 years to learn how to become a really great dishonest citizen. I would never just dabble in it because I think if you're going to be a dishonest person, you better know what you're doing. Otherwise, you can end up in jail. For
Mm-hmm.
my way, I took being honest as the course.
Right.
However, when I started experimenting in the tradition of scientists for hundreds of years who experiment on themselves rather than others, remember, it's only in recent years that we've begun doing experiments on human beings. For
Right.
all hundreds or thousands of years before that, scientists were only allowed to experiment on themselves or dead people.
Right.
And recently we started allowing human subjects, it's called, right? Although we
Mm-hmm.
still use monkeys and mice.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started experimenting, I was experimenting with an illegal substance.
Yeah.
which means me, Richard Honest Citizen, had become me, Richard Outlaw.
Yes.
I wasn't comfortable, and I've never been comfortable with that. I don't think of myself as a criminal or an outlaw, but once I continuously started doing that 50 years ago and having those substances in my purview, I was technically a criminal.
Yeah.
That was an adverse effect, sir, because it affected me psychologically. I don't want to think of myself that way. And yet, the reality is, I had to be very careful about who I told about what for
hmm
many
hmm
years.
Yeah.
And I wrote about that in one of my books, Psychedelic Wisdom, where I interviewed many people in their 70s and 80s who had been doing psychedelic medicine for 40 or 50 years and in secrecy.
Right.
And when you're in secrecy, you got something to hide. And
Yeah.
that's a kind of insecurity because when
Yeah.
you're secure, you can let it all hang out. You got nothing to worry about,
Yeah. It's an important
right?
point.
So
And
that's an adverse effect.
yes, yes, it is. And it's one that people don't often think of because they're thinking more of the physical or mental effects, but not the societal effects in a way, which is what you're talking about.
Exactly. The
So,
change in how it affects your self-concept.
yes. Okay. We're going to take a pause for a moment. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I've got some more questions for you about why you wrote the book at this particular point in time, and maybe some things that have come out or things that have happened recently that show why there's such a need for, um, what many call harm reduction or call a prevention from adverse effects. Okay.
Definitely. I'll be right here waiting.
All right, wonderful. So everyone, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We do this every Thursday, every Wednesday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on talkradio.nyc. And we'll be right back with our guest, Dr. Richard Lewis Miller, author of the book, Adverse Effects and Therapeutic Potential of Psychedelic Medicines. And we'll be right back in just a moment. Are you a spiritual seeker? Are you interested in expanded states of reality? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will dive into these topics with authors, teachers, researchers, and guides. Tune in at our new time, Wednesdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's the Conscious Consultant Hour, Wednesdays, 12 noon Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
And welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. So, Dr. Miller, there have been some pretty big things happening in the psychedelic industry lately, but one of them that made a lot of people not so happy was MAPS's application for MDMA. And the application got rejected by the FDA because of issues with the data. A lot of people talk about, well, the political stuff around it. There was other things, influences that caused them to not approve MDMA. What was your view on that? Was that was that justified that the MDMA didn't get approved on their trials, or do you feel it was uh, an indication that we do need to be a little more clinical, a little more uh, uh, prudent with how we accumulate data and how we run our trials?
This was a retake of what we went through in 1985 the exact same thing.
Really?
And they came up with the exact same various kinds of reasons. And I don't think the reasons have anything to do with science or with the clinical tools that we used. We've got a massive amount of clinical data on MDMA now, and it's obvious to anybody in science that MDMA is a safe medicine for psychotherapeutic use. It's also obvious to anyone who's either taken it or used it that it's an excellent adjunct to couples therapy, because it softens the defensive system and it opens up empathy. And what more can a couple want than to be less defensive with each other and more empathetic with each other in a therapy session? And so they did again what they did in 85. I don't know the exact politics behind it, but my speculation is that when you're a company that's manufacturing medicine that you have to take every single day, and somebody comes out with a medicine that you can take once a year, your business model is in trouble.
Right.
And it's just so interesting that in the face of this kind of information, the pharmaceutical companies are willing to march on in the same exact way that the tobacco companies were willing at one point to swear that tobacco wasn't addictive.
Right.
In the same way that those medical doctors in that family, which I won't name, went to Congress and told them that OxyContin is not addictive. These are bold-faced lies that these people are perpetrating on the public, and they are threatened, because if they don't come up with a way to manufacture these very same psychedelic medicines and move in on the market, their market share will be dramatically reduced by those who do manufacture the psychedelics, because there's no stopping a river. And the river of psychedelic medicine has been unleashed in recent years. And they can come down now with the police again and turn down maps as they did again and do all kinds of fascist things, but you're not going to stop it anymore, because too many million Americans have already tried them and they didn't go to hell, and all the other terrible things that some people promised them. And when you have millions of people trying something, you're not going to stop it. So there's a momentum that's going now, and I'm sure the pharmaceutical companies are working very hard to come up with products that they can sell that are going to compete. But all this is a way of saying that these forces of money that I'm talking about, I'm quite certain were involved with that FDA turning down the MAPS application for more research for the particular and legalization of MDMA as a medicine. And who suffers? The public.
People.
The public suffer. Now, we do have something else going on, Michael, that I should mention. We have a big problem that most of the psychedelic medicines, ayahuasca, LSD, and psilocybin, they last many hours.
Yes.
Which means if you have a guide or a professional therapist with you, that person has to be with you for many hours. And since those people charge by the hour, and you're with somebody for 6-7 hours, the experience can be extremely expensive.
Yes.
if we maintain a posture, we being the psychedelic science community, of holding out products that are extremely expensive because they're so labor intensive, we'll be no different than Big Pharma. We're just coming at it from a different angle. They're charging a little bit every day of the year and get a whole bunch of money from you at the end of the year because you use 365 of their pills. We might be saying you only need one pill a year, but if it takes 8 hours at $400 an hour, it costs you $3,200 or $5,000 for the weekend. How many human beings in America are going to be able to pay $5,000 for a weekend experience? So once again, we'd be stuck in the same situation that we think we're trying to improve on, the pharmaceutical situation, which our medicines are not only better, but we also have to be competitive financially. And you've seen, Michael, that some of the sprays that come out and some of the other things, they're very expensive. They're very expensive. And we're living in a time now where the country is being bifurcated. Instead of upper, middle, and lower class, we pretty much eliminated a lot of the middle class. So what we have is now more like 70-30, with 70% of the population down and about 30% of the population up.
Right.
See, and that makes for a very difficult situation because the 30% represent at least 100 million people. And when you have 100 million people that can afford things, it makes it even tougher for those who can't, because there isn't pressure on the manufacturers since they've got that 30% to sell to, right? There's pressure to take care of the rest of the crowd. And the rest of the crowd are suffering mightily, mightily. We've got serious, and this is the most serious mental health crisis in my lifetime, Michael. It's the most serious. We have 30 to 40% depressed, 30 to 40% with anxiety, 72% overweight or obese. I'm not quite sure of diabetes, but it's pretty high.
Yes.
And then 70% living paycheck to paycheck. You put those variables together, anxiety, depression, overweight, and paycheck to paycheck, that's a prescription for disaster, and that's the situation we're in our country right now.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very serious.
So Dr. Miller, you've been, around this industry for a long time. You're truly one of the elders. You've seen, many of the legends in the psychedelic industry. You've talked with them. You've interviewed them on your shows. Why did you come out with this book now? Why did you feel it was necessary to talk about adverse reactions and what to do about it at this point in time?
Well, for two reasons. It's a good question. One reason is the book is part of a series. See, it's the fifth one of a series. The first book, Psychedelic Medicine, I brought the public to meet the greatest scientists in the world who are doing psychedelic medicine research in the face of the government saying no for 50 years. These were the few people who managed to get permission and did research. It was Stan Groff. It was Charlie Grobe at UCLA. I interviewed Roland Griffiths at Johns Hopkins. The people who just kept bumping into the government until they got permission, they did something. So the first book was The Greatest Scientists, and here's what they have to say about what they found out. The second book was, here's what prominent elders have to say about having experimented with these medicines that these other people are researching. Here's what these people have to say after experimenting with them for 40 and 50 years. And so I had these people, quote, out themselves. Most of these people had never talked about their self-experimentation with psychedelics out of fear. In the same way, for example, that the great astrophysicist and astronomer Carl Sagan never talked about his use of LSD, and he told his wife, "You can tell the public after I'm dead."
Mm-hmm.
And you don't hear Watson and Crick, who discovered the DNA molecule, you don't hear them talking much about their fact that they did a lot of their research on LSD.
Right.
So in Psychedelic Wisdom, these people talked openly. So that was book 2. First the scientist, then the experience. Then in book 3, I did a textbook with some friends, and it's more for the trade, and it's a book of different chapters on the use of psychedelic medicine in therapy.
Mm.
Then the next book was Psychedelic Medicine at the End of Life, because I wanted to get the word out to people in that category suffering from anxiety and depression that there was hope, that there was something they could do in order to go out with joy and gladness instead of fear and anxiety that has been brought on, if I may get in a word, brought on to them by religion. And that's very unfortunate, but that's another whole story you don't want me to get into. And then, so then, most likely the last in the series, now that I've told you the science, now that I've introduced you to people who have taken it for 50 years, now I've given you some tactics for use at the end of life, now I'm going to tell you the other side of the story, because you have to hear it. As an honest person, it's my responsibility. So you ask why I did it? It's a responsibility to tell the public about the adverse effects. And that's, so it was 5th in the series. It was part of an overall plan, but it was also a plan because I felt it was so important for this science to be the opposite of big pharma and be transparent. If I do one more in the series, I don't know if I will, but if I do one more, it'll be psychedelics and sexuality. That's what nobody wants to talk about.
Yes, very controversial.
Very few people want to talk about that. Too dangerous.
No, I hope you do, because it definitely deserves more of a conversation.
I think so. I think so.
I'm curious, what do you hope the readers of this book are going to get from reading it? Like, what's your intention behind it? Did you hear me?
I'd like the readers to come away thinking to themselves, I understand what this man is saying about the risk-reward ratio, and I think that's the kind of thing that can help me in decision-making in my life, to look at things that I'm considering doing from the perspective of how am I going to benefit and how might I get hurt? How am I going to personally benefit from this behavior, whatever it happens to be, and how might I get hurt? And when I applied that, for example, to motorcycling, which I used to do, I quit motorcycling because the benefit did not justify how I might get hurt again. I've already gotten hurt. And it's a way of looking. So that's one thing I'd like them to get, a way of looking at the world that they live in, and in terms of the experiences that they take on for themselves, how to make, what to use for decision-making process. And I'm offering one decision-making process is benefit and pain, and to use that. Another reason or takeaway I'd like them to have is that, hey, there's some honest people in this field of psychedelic science. These are not the same as the big pharma people. This guy's yelling to the rooftops, tell everything. I like that point of view. I'd like them to see that perspective, understand why I'm doing it, and champion it and say, yes, We need this in everything. We need to know what's in our food. We need to know what's in our water. We need to know what's in our air, because human beings have three basic fuels: air, water, and food.
Right.
And if we don't know what's in the fuel, it's like going with a diesel car to a gasoline station and not picking diesel, picking gasoline, or just picking at random. And that's what so many of us do. We don't really pay attention to the extent that's in our own self-interest to our air, water, and food, our basic fuel. But the basic fuel is essential. As soon as I said, put gasoline in a diesel engine, you knew exactly what I meant. And everybody does. And everybody who drives a car that uses high octane, they know not to use low octane because the engine will complain. But yet that same person who will make certain to get high octane for their truck will go eat some junk food. They have no idea what they're eating, and then they'll drink a bottle of liquid, and you read the ingredients, and there's 26 things in there that you can't even understand what they are in that drink.
Right.
You say, oh, but it only has a few calories, so it must be okay. Baloney. You're drinking all those little names that you don't know, and you're spending money on it, right? So air, water, and food, the three essentials for our fuel. And that, they can get that from my book because they can raise their awareness using the psychedelic medicine awareness. Am I going to do it or am I not? They can apply that same kind of thinking to other things that they take into their body. How does it benefit me? How's it going to hurt me? My rule of thumb is you look at a label on something you're going to eat, and if there are a bunch of words you don't understand, that's a message not to eat it.
Yeah, exactly. Right? If you can't pronounce what's in your food, don't eat it.
Don't eat it. If you can, right. If you can't pronounce it, don't eat it, right? Celery and broccoli doesn't advertise on television.
Right. So one last question before we close out the show. So if someone's listening to this interview or recording, and it could be today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, and they're curious, they've heard their friends talk about doing something with psychedelics, and they don't know where to start, where to do. What would you recommend to them in order to be able to avoid, and you may not be able to 100% avoid adverse effects, but to give them the most likelihood to avoid the adverse effects?
If somebody is considering for the first time, I think one of the first things I would do is contact the local psychedelic society. They're all over the United States. And talk to them. Just call them on the phone. Make friends. Say, hey, I'm thinking about taking psychedelics. I'd like to learn more from you. What do you have to tell me? I'd call them on the phone. I would definitely do some research on the internet. And I would start with looking at MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. I would look at MAPS, and I would start by reading a few books and really, pick out some books on the particular medicine that you're thinking of taking and learn something about it. And of course, listening to shows like yours. But you want to, the basic message here is get a bunch of information first. Get some information first. And of course, you talk to your friends and talk to trusted elders and people you know. But if you're doing it for therapeutic reasons or mind expansion reasons, not for recreation.
Right, not for escapism.
If you're doing it for therapeutic or expansion or creativity, you want to do some research. If you're doing it for recreation, that's another whole category that we haven't even talked about. The
Right.
adverse effects, of course, still apply because the medicine is the medicine, but then you're going into another whole area having to do with where you take it, because when you take this medicine as medicine for therapy, you need a place that's extremely quiet and extremely safe, and where you're not going to get intruded on, where you can be by yourself or with your guide for the whole time. When you take it recreationally, you might go to a rock concert, you got like thousands
Right.
of people around you. It's a total different experience, and it requires a whole different way of relating to the medicine that I'm not going to go into.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
taking a position against such recreational use in any way. I'm not, but I am saying it's a whole area in and of itself that's separate from this other area.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dr. Miller, I really want to thank you for your work and for what you do and for taking the time to come on the show today. I really appreciate your voice and I appreciate your perspective on things. So thank you.
Now, you're welcome. I'm going to get in two last things before I go, Michael.
Okay.
Two things that are essential if you're thinking of doing these medicines. The medicine itself, where did it come from? How clean is it? Are you 100% sure of it? If you're not 100% sure of it, think about your truck. Are you going to
Right.
put something into the tank you're not sure of? Number two, who are you taking it with? Critical issue. Critical issue. Whether it's a guide you're paying or a friend, it's a critical issue.
Hmm.
Not all guides are made in heaven. Some of them are
Yeah.
scammers. Some of them are fantastic.
Yeah.
Two issues, the medicine and the guide. Thanks for letting me get that in.
You got it. You got it, Dr. Miller. Thank you. Again, the book is The Adverse Effects and Therapeutic Potential of Psychedelic Medicines. It's out now, available wherever you like to buy your books. Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. Take care and have a good day. And of course, thank you, my loyal listeners, for tuning in each week. Without you, there is no show. And if you did miss any part of today's show, you can always catch the replay on talkradio.nyc and on your favorite podcasting app, Apple, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon, wherever you love to listen to podcasts, you can hear the Conscious Consultant Hour. Thank you all for tuning in. Take care. We will talk to you all next week.